Don't have a relationship or have had a personal interaction, so I asked for a bit of information about this employee so that I could share it with the rest of our audience and those watching out there. So here is what was shared during the opening day celebration just a few weeks ago. The individual who stood out to the nominations committee was praised for her outstanding contributions to the school community. She is clearly respected and admired due to her unfailing dependability and dedication, and goes about her work with caring, thoughtfulness, and enthusiasm. She was described as the epitome of hard work, thoroughness, and attention to detail, with a work ethic that is true inspiration to efforts that all should put forth. A colleague wrote that she tirelessly goes above and beyond without even considering what she does as above and beyond. It is just what she does. One nomination stated that this individual engages with each of us as she goes about her work and empowers us by presenting us with a well-cared environment each day. As far as being inspirational, she shows that no matter what you do in life, you can do it with your utmost attention and a dedication to doing it your best. Another coworker expressed that too often we overlook the importance of support people in our lives who enable us to do our jobs better. The physical environment in which we work is incredibly impactful to the quality of our work and sets an emotional tone for our interactions with others. There is a ripple effect in a large community like our school. The actions of one person are not isolated, but rather flow outward to impact others. That nomination went on to say that this individual is one of the persons behind the scenes in my work life who helps create a positive tone in my day from the moment I open my classroom door. I know she has a similar impact on my colleagues. It is an honor and feels completely fitting, given the current times, to congratulate our Greeley Middle School custodian, Mary Ann Anthony, as our 2020 Employee of the Year. So, Mary Ann, we do have something for you, and I believe I'd open it up for other board members to speak, if anyone is willing.
Well, of course, I couldn't pass that up, ever. And Mary Ann, I know this horrifies you to have people talk about you, so of course we're going to do that. I just wanted to tell you, if none of us up here knew anything other than what Tyler just read, that probably would be enough. And having the respect of your colleagues is just phenomenal. But a number of us have seen you in different venues, supporting the district, supporting people. You represent yourself so well. And in doing that, you do everyone around you justice. And I can't thank you enough for what you do for the community. So thank you, Mary Ann.
Tyler. Oh, go ahead, Margot.
I just want to say I served on the committee, and it was a real honor to learn about all of the people who were nominated. It was harder than I thought it was going to be, but it just gave me a lot of pride overall, just to hear about all the great people that Mary Ann works with and that we all are here to help support. So congratulations to Mary Ann and to all the people who are nominated.
Mm-hmm. All right, Mary Ann, you want to meet me halfway? It's kind of a long walk.
Sorry.
Awesome to start the night off with such a positive agenda item. So following that, we have approval of our minutes. The first... Will you be allowed public comment before the voting minutes? I'm going to follow the agenda that was presented. Thank you.
Yes, for policy, though, will you allow public comment on the voting of the minutes before you vote?
I'm going to follow the agenda that's been presented. Thank you. The last time I'm going to answer that question is I'm going to follow the agenda that's presented. So I'm going to move on to approval of the September 3rd, 2020 minutes. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor? Thank you. And second, September 14th, 2020. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay.
Tyler, I
and-
just want to say I'm abstaining from both of those.
Okay.
Just for Jeff that's taking minutes.
All right. Thank you. And all in favor?
I'm also abstaining from September 14th.
Okay. Thank you, Anne. All right, and now we will move on to public comment. Just as a reminder, public comment is for 3 minutes. I will set a timer as soon as you start speaking. When you hear the timer go off, please respect the time limit so other people have a chance to speak.
My name is Mike Doyle. I live in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and I own and write for falmouthtoday.me. I'm going to dedicate my 3 minutes tonight to the men and women who serve in the military all over the world, protecting our freedom of speech and freedom of the press by doing the Pledge of Allegiance. I invite anybody in the room who'd like to join me to stand at this time. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Sean McBride, Cumberland. The new slogan for MSAD 51 should be engage, empower, inspire, and forget to do your diligence. The political indoctrination of your children is well underway under the guise of MSAD 51's Equity and Inclusion Committee. We're nearly all members are Democrats, and the school board, where 7 of the 9 voting members are Democrats. What if some of these members are actually self-proclaimed socialist Democrats? There's a severe conflict of interest that Tyler McGinley, school board chair and co-chair of the Equity and Inclusion Committee, can whimsically announce a new anti-racism partner with USM with no school board vote, shockingly enough, no public comment, no expectations of success, no transparency to the parents, no discussion about costs. And that's been working on since June. It would be also nice to know if you knew some of the policies that you represented.
I'd love to be able to have the time to read all these policies and things that you have right now, but I don't.
So essentially, CCI, which was allegedly illegally hired by 3 members of the school board and Superintendent Jeff Porter, laying a foundation of training for our teachers to teach critical race theory. Now MSAD 51's graduated from CCI, a socialist and anarchist company, their words, not mine, to a full-blown Marxist company, Black Lives Matter, and the race grifter extremist Ibram Kendi, who are both partnering with USM. Again, after MSAD did zero diligence. Guilt by association, take 2. Abrams highlights, capitalism is inherently racist, except for, I know he's profiting from all of your white guilt. He also stated white people were literally aliens, but then scaled that down to say they were just simply a different breed of human. He came out to attack Amy Coney Barrett, the next Supreme Judge, saying that she was using her 2 adopted Haitian children as props in her lifelong pictures of denial. From his book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, he states, the status quo must be fought and beaten, and anyone not actively engaged in that is therefore a legitimate target for attack. Fought and beaten, legitimate target for attack. Antifa is just not an idea, folks, it's an organization. So Gurley's okay with socialism and anarchism, now it's okay with Marxism and violence and monstrous acts of lawlessness. These are the leaders you want laying the foundation to educate your children?
Could you pull your mask up over your nose, please? Thank you.
These children The parents who don't want their kids immersed in the hypocrisy of indoctrination need to take a stand. The school board needs to end this irresponsible decision-making immediately and also learn the policies in which it presides. The policy of public participation allows for public comment on any agenda item before it is voted upon. You continue to not follow the policies because you've publicly stated you don't know what they are. That's also against a number of other policies in which you became the chair of this board.
Cumberland. I have two students in the schools, a first grader and a fourth grader, and I am here this evening to express my excitement and my gratitude for the invitation to participate in the USM partnership on equity, and my appreciation for the work and the commitment that you all have made to that work, which I believe is extremely important. I think there are a number of things that I would hope are not controversial about a commitment to equity and things that we could improve, including things such as having representative teachers and staff and administrators who represent the diversity of our student body. It was interesting to look through some of the information that was sent with the update on September 24th about how equity does tie in with the district's vision for citizenship, and how we do have 7.4%, I was just looking at, of our student body is non-Caucasian, identifies as non-Caucasian. I don't know what the numbers are for our teachers, staff, and administrators, but I expect that they are not that high. So I think, again, taking actions such as hiring a more diverse teacher, administrator, staff body would help reflect that. I would hope that all kids in our district would have the opportunity to read books where they see characters who reflect them and what they look like, and that's not just for our non-white students, that our white students, my kids are both white, that they also get to see folks who don't always look like them in the literature that they're reading and in positions of education and power. And I hope that all of our kids have the opportunity to feel a sense of safety and belonging, that we are creating a learning environment where every kid can come ready to learn. And I think that equity is a really important part of that. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing. I'm excited about the possibility of this partnership with USM because as I read the update that was sent out, it sounds like there will be a planning process and that out of this, there will come a plan that I think my hope is will help us better understand what we mean even when we say equity and what truly those goals are and what the specifics are so that we're breaking down some of the misperceptions and misinformation that might be out there, that this really is a good thing that I think our community can come around and that we can all embrace. So thank you. Is there anyone else for public comment this evening? Okay. All right. We will move on from public comment to presentations from program and curriculum highlights from Julie Olson and Susie Robbins.
Okay, good evening. So I am here to do an update similar to the administrators who came 2 weeks ago about the opening of school and how it's going under instructional support for the start of the year. I want to start by just saying our staff are really remarkable and our students equally match that remarkability. Our staff have been strong, flexible, and really student focused. This has been a very hard opening for our staff, having to work with students who don't fully understand the pandemic. They don't fully understand our CDC guidelines and why they are required to wear masks or maintain 6 feet from staff that they used to give fist bumps to, or give high fives to, or walk really close and get physical prompting from. Our students have done a really nice job adjusting to the new normal. So certainly I think all of our students have pre-K through 12. They have been remarkable. We had many students that we were very nervous with parents this summer about whether or not they were going to be able to wear a mask in school and tolerate the 6 feet and whatnot. Most of those students have already learned to wear a mask and are doing that throughout their school day. We have a few students in the district who are still working on that, but all of their data is trending upwards, meaning that they are actively increasing the amount of time per day that they can wear the mask. And so therefore they're having opportunities to be in the same classroom with some of their peers during those times that they have their masks on. Our parents have been really strong partners in teaching and growing with us in the new expectations, which really shows the strength in consistency across settings and increasing our students' performance. One thing that's very unique to special education, and I think was worth noting, is that regardless if our students are in fully remote school, hybrid school, or with us for 4 days a week in person, we have a responsibility to implement their individual education plans full time, 5 days a week. So our special educators from day one have been servicing students both in person and remotely in groups. So they may have 2 or 3 students that they're working on a reading group with in person, and they have 2 or 3 students who are in a Google Meet at that same time with them as part of their reading group. So they are servicing 5 full day a week of IEPs with students who are only in person for the most part 2 days, or are fully remote in some cases, since we're responsible for all of the IEPs. And our staff have really adjusted to that. They hit the ground running and have not looked back. They have gotten just better and refined their practices, and we really are in occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy, social work, as well as all of our specially designed instruction. We're meeting those IEPs across the schools and grade levels. We do have about 28 students district-wide that are accessing 4 days a week of in-person instruction, and those are primarily our students with significant functional life skills needs who are really unable to access remote learning and require that in-person instruction. Additionally, we have a couple of students in our alt ed program at the high school who are accessing 4 full days as well. I'm working really closely with the surrounding directors as we navigate these times so that our practices match those of our colleagues in Falmouth and Yarmouth and Cape Elizabeth and Great New Gloucester. Additionally, we meet weekly with the state director so that, because as we've been told several times, IDEA was not built for a pandemic, and so while we have really clear regulations, much of what we're navigating don't follow those regulations. I mean, we wrote IEPs for 5 full days a week. We didn't write it for students to be in person 2 days a week and what that would look like. Additionally, I wanted to note that on top of sort of navigating the opening of the school year, our staff this year, every 5 years, each district goes under a review or an audit from the State Department of Education, and it's our year. So not only do we get to sort of navigate what it looks like in this new time, we are also in review. So that starts in September, and they're on site in May. So we have each month, we have expectations of what is to be supplied to the state and get information back and corrective action plans and whatnot, and then they'll be on site in May to do additional sort of feedback to staff and visit programs to ensure that we're in compliance with all of the regulations. So certainly, I would say I've seen a lot of energy from my staff and a lot of enthusiasm about finally having our students back in front of us and really needing that re-energy. I think this spring was hard to have remote instruction for some students who we knew needed the personal contact. They're excited to have them back. They're still growing, they're still learning, and they're still developing around the expectations. We still have challenges in front of us. We have a lot of backlogs of evaluations that we were unable to do in the spring that we're now catching up on. And certainly staff are working tirelessly to do that with the idea any hope that we don't close for any period of time. And our student progress looks really good overall. We've, students were able to maintain where they were in the spring for the most part and have taken off now into the start of the school year. Our outdoor learning spaces under the tents have been utilized very heavily for our students, particularly those that were struggling to wear their masks and need to be in separate rooms from any other students or outside. So we were, a little disappointed that the weather took down a couple of those and are looking forward to replacements. But overall, I think that we are in a much better place than we anticipated being a few months ago, and glad to have our students back.
Thank you, Julie.
Sure.
Does anybody have any questions or comments for Julie? I just want to say thank you. I know that your staff and your department, this was a big lift. There were a lot of unknowns, as it is for everyone, but your staff has a particularly unique situation in this setting, and I just can't say thank you enough for all you do and how creative you've been in finding different types of masks and protective equipment. I really appreciate the constant dedication to making sure everybody's safe.
Thank you.
Tyler, if I could as well, I would like to echo what you said about your staff. And on a good day, it's probably not the easiest job that anybody ever decided to do. And as I look around and see some of the very, very skilled individuals who do this work and make changes in people's lives, I want to echo my appreciation. I guess a question to you would be, is there anything that stands in your way for being even more successful in the work that you're doing right now, or is there anything that you need from the district or from us?
Thank you. Great question. We are currently understaffed and we are actively trying to hire. And so, I'll do a guiltless plea of if anybody knows anybody who can work as an educational technician or a special educator, please, we're a great district. We'll give a lot of support and train people accordingly. We have some wonderful students to work with, and that would help a lot. I think, any year it's hard to be short-staffed, but this year it feels particularly challenging to not have the staff that we need in front of us. And it's not for short of us trying. I mean, we actively are advertising. It's just that there aren't people right now applying for those jobs.
Is the shortage as a result of COVID, or is it just exacerbated a little bit more?
I would say both. Every year we generally have some positions open, but this year we had more resignations due to COVID.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
I don't think anybody doesn't like a thank you. Okay.
GCA House. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So before I start my presentation on the remote school, I also wanted to let you know that there are two other areas that I'm focusing on to at least to start the year. So the first area is evaluation and professional growth. That is a committee, the steering committee that will be reviewing our current evaluation system so that we can see what components we can do in the yellow zone, what components can we tweak to fit in the yellow zone. We'll also be looking for ways we can provide professional growth opportunities for staff in this type of environment. And we are adjusting our system to fit with the new 2-year probationary period that has started this year. Before this year, it was a 3-year probationary period for new teachers. Before it was 3 years, it was 2 years, so it went from 2 to 3, and now it's back to 2. So we need to take a look at our evaluation system and make some adjustments to make sure we fit the new state requirement. The second area of focus will be continued work with our certification committee. Certification was slow last spring through the state, and they made some adjustments to accommodate people. But we need to take a look at where people are and take a look at what the 2-year probationary period will mean to our certification committee. So those are two separate areas. And then obviously the majority of my presentation will be on the remote school. So time was spent this summer looking at curriculum. I worked with Kathy Carney, who's one of our GT, gifted and talented teachers, who has worked over 40 years of experience working with homeschool families. We both joined online groups to understand the strengths and potential drawbacks of curriculum. I worked with a state curriculum group to see what was going on all over Maine. We reviewed the curriculum for alignment with the Common Core state standards, which both the district and the state use for learning outcomes. Then we looked at our district curriculum for a scope and sequence that's used to meet these outcomes as we continue to fine-tune our curriculum search. Lastly, we looked for curriculum that was feasible for our families. We wanted an online platform that limited the amount of screen time needed for students to make progress. We wanted something that would provide families with the structure and support needed to be able to work with their children at home, but not be overwhelming. So we made a decision to use Edgenuity with students 6 through 12, the online platform, and an online platform called ExactPath for our students in the K through 5 grades. We are supplementing ExactPath at the K-5 level with curriculum from Match Fish Tank, which is out of Cambridge, and Eureka Math. So our remote learners, we currently have 130 students enrolled across the district, and our remote school learners received their electronic devices first. Our tech department focused on students in the remote school, knowing they needed to access online curriculum. So here's a snapshot of what it looks like at each of the buildings. K through 3, we have 60 students at this time. We have a K1 instructor with 35 students. We have a 2-3 instructor with 26 students. They have class meetings with each grade level. They post weekly lesson plans based on what the Wilson School has designated as essential skills. So out of the Common Core state standards, knowing that kids haven't had a lot of direct instruction since last March, the Wilson School, all the schools have narrowed down what are the essential skills that kids need. So we took a look at those when we were designing our lesson plans. And as I talked about, there are some resources that we use, and we continue to use online learning platform. It's skill reinforcement in reading, language arts, and math. It begins with a diagnostic assessment and then adjusts for each student. And we use the information from ExactPath to find kids who have similar needs to plan small group instruction. And then both of our instructors have daily office hours for parent contact. 4-5 looks very similar. There are 20 students at this time. We have one instructor, Kathy Carney, who is half-time with this and also half-time teaching our gifted and talented. She holds class meetings 4 days a week. And again, the weekly lesson plans are based on essential skills. And then the curriculum pieces are about the same. And again, daily office hours for parent contact. The middle school, we changed platforms. So we have 23 students at this time. We have a full-time instructor, or part-time instructor, Mark McDonough, who also does gifted and talented. And then we have a full-time support person, Jerry Colella. His job is to really monitor all the Edgenuity classes that students are in, see where kids are getting stuck, check their assignments. He also takes attendance every day. And then Mark holds office hours for parents 4 days a week. At the high school, Chris and his staff have worked really hard to create student schedules that are similar to the ones they would have had in the hybrid model. We have 25 students at this time. They use a combination of Edgenuity classes and some synchronous learning. Dan Westhoven, who most of you have met, is a coordinator, and he does weekly check-ins with the students. And right now, the things that we are continuing to work on, We want to adjust our curriculum based on input from the hybrid model. So working closely with the schools to make sure our curriculum alignment is similar to what they're offering. And then obviously we'll adjust our curriculum based on student need. We have ordered materials for our K-5 learners now that we know who they are and what their needs are. We have a quick survey we're going to put out for our K-3 families. We're finding that some, especially at that younger level, do not want their kids in front of a screen or want it for limited times. So we really want to touch base with them to figure out what components of the remote school offerings they want to be part of. We'll have ongoing meetings with the building staff, continue to monitor attendance and student progress. And we had a parent forum this morning from 9 to 10, and I thank you for those of you who are able to join, where we received some feedback that we will take into consideration as we continue to tweak what we are offering.
Excuse me while I roll back to my seat here. Thank you, Susie.
Yes.
Does anybody have any questions, comments? Kevin?
I don't want to go first.
Okay. Peter?
Susie, what are we, does the microphone work? Okay. Susie, what are we doing for science, social studies, and languages in the 6 to 8?
So 6 to 8, most of their classes, or all of their classes, are through Edgenuity. The only drawback for Edgenuity right now is that our 6th graders are not able to take language courses through Edgenuity because they don't offer courses through them. So we are looking at using a platform called Mangoes. We couldn't use something like Rosetta Stone or Duolingo because they won't sign a Student Privacy Act with us, so we have to be careful about the online platforms that we choose.
Okay, and the high school, kind of the same thing. How do we handle like science labs and stuff like that?
I'm going to Chris is not here anymore. Chris, do you want to talk about the high school and science labs? And
Sure. Sorry, I stepped out for just a second. Sorry, could you repeat the question real quick?
How in the high school do we handle, first of all, like science labs, and second of all, these specialty courses that we have, like economics and computer science and heaven knows what that I can't think of?
And you're asking specifically for our fully remote students, is that
Yes,
it?
yeah.
Okay. Good question. So as far as labs go, obviously we don't have access to the same equipment for, say, a highly specific biology dissection or a potentially dangerous chemical reaction if attempted at home. That being said, the online program that our science courses are through does have a variety of demonstrations, and then in addition, we're attempting to replicate, Susie mentioned that in a number of cases where possible and appropriate, we've tried to run synchronous classes with our staff, and so our 9th grade Foundations of Science course is a synchronous course with one of our teachers where a combination of demonstrations with more basic science experiments that can be done safely at home, physics experiments using the baseball bat and the ball, maybe not the window, but those things that can be done safely are being guided by the teacher.
Thank you.
And then as far as specialty courses, we do have access to a full slate of electives through the online program that are self-paced. That includes, we have a couple of students taking a psychology course online through that, as well as an astronomy course. So there are elective offerings, again, not with our staff, but through the online program that we're able to offer.
Thank you.
so So the only highlight I would add to that is that Dan Westhoven is piloting a project, his silo project. So his initiated learning.
Student-led independent learning
Yeah.
opportunity.
But students are working with him, and it's an elective credit, but they are self-designing something that they want to get better at, and then working with Dan, creating a pathway in connections and ways to get there. Things like, I want to run a 5K, and I've never done that before. I know there are other examples, but for one, that's a new program that the high school is piloting with remote school students.
I just recently saw a presentation that he shared about that program, and he himself made himself the student and did his own project to really show how that program works. And I just want to say thank you for acknowledging that those programs are just as important as biology and other things. So I'm glad, I don't know how he does all of these jobs, but I'm glad that that program is there. And I will say that I attended the forum this morning, and I was so grateful to hear from some of the parents that gave us some good feedback and some real willingness to help at the same time. And there seems to be a need of just connection and making sure that kids feel connected and parents feel connected, and maybe there's a way to connect those communities online. So I think there's some simple solutions at first and continue to grow. So thank you for all you're doing. I didn't mean to stop.
Tyler, I have a
Yeah,
couple
go ahead.
questions. And Susie, I would echo also what Tyler's saying. Outside of the remote learning, I think the connection with the kids that are coming 2 days a week, I think there needs to be a little bit more connection with the parents and the students and the teachers, just to kind of have that said. The question I have is, we have a commitment for the remote learners through the end of the year.
Through December, yes.
Have we been looking at what date we'll need to know whether those students are coming back, or if we're going to have bigger numbers come January? And are we going to be set up to bring those kids back in easily or smoothly, and how that transition will work?
That's a great question, and somebody asked that this morning.
Okay.
We have not designed exactly what the transition back will look like. We have only picked December as the date that we need to start wrapping things up and taking a look at what will happen in January. So I'll have a better answer for you soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
So Susie, this is one of those places where I desperately try not to dive into the weeds because it isn't, quite frankly, where we should be playing, but I'm going to anyway. So the question that I was going to ask, which I think that you've answered well, and Jennifer kind of crossed with that, which was those things that we do to support the parents. You talked about the virtual office hours that are being offered in each building. How many parents are taking advantage of that?
I would say at the K-3 level, almost all are. It's tricky because a lot of it is online curriculum, and we're asking kids, 5- and 6-year-olds sometimes, to log in, and they need their parents' help. So sometimes we need to support parents with technology issues. It's also scary for parents. I think the parent connection with each other is really going to be important, because I think that it is scary. They worry about their kids, obviously. They worry about not sending them back and what they might be missing. And I think it will be important to have them connect with each other, but also connect with other families.
And is that a place, though, through those office hours and then in forums like you did today, where they can continue to build that network of support?
I think that's one way to do it. There are other ways as well. I think this morning they started self-organizing during our parent forum so that they could communicate with one another. I know they've planned field trips together too, especially on Wednesdays, on those off days. So that's one way. The other thing that I know, the K-1 class is starting pen pals. So they'll have pen pals with students who are in school, so in the hybrid model, so that they can connect with people outside of their school, per se. I think the other important piece will be ongoing parent forums and parent meetings. So that's something we have in mind, and we just talked about that this morning.
That's good. Will you be you'll be sharing out some of the things that you picked up in the forum?
Absolutely. Jeff is, I think we have one more meeting, parent forum tomorrow night, and then after that, we're going to gather all the feedback from the 4 forums that we've had, make some suggestions. So you'll hear more about that.
Great. So then I'll just ask you that final question, that as we look at additional federal funds, and if you were putting together a wish list of what's going to make that remote school having additional rigor, making it better for the parent experience and the learner experience, what would be on your list?
So I'll echo what Julie said. Staff is one thing, especially when we have 60 students at the K through 3 level. Having more staff with the younger learners would be really important. Again, it's not for lack of trying. We have advertised, we have interviewed, and schools are a scary place to be for some people right now, so we really haven't found the right person yet.
Thanks for everything you do, Susie.
No, thank you.
Anybody else? All right. Thank you, Susie. So next we have superintendent's report.
All right, good evening. First of all, I just want to thank Julie and Susie for their presentations tonight. Over the last couple of meetings, we've had our principals present. We've had 2 of our directors. At the next board meeting, Mr. Poulin and Mr. Van Kuren will be presenting on district-wide items as well. This is something that we do each fall for those of you who are new or just need a reminder. Try to bring all the administrators who are in charge of different departments, different schools in our district, and have them highlight and update what is going on. So for the superintendent's blog this week, as Susie noted, we've had 3 listening forums. We have 1 more tomorrow night. And we've had parents asking. We've also had a staff forum last week. So we'll have 4 forums that we'll have held by tomorrow, and we're going to be taking that information. There's a lot of good feedback, and summarizing and coming up with basically the big items that we've heard in order to improve the yellow zone as we head towards the holidays. So we've asked people 2 questions during these forums. One is, what's going well, and what are things that you would like us to adjust or tweak in the yellow zone? So we've gotten a lot of information from that, so we appreciate that. So also in my report tonight, a lot of people have asked, how do you do certain things during a pandemic? Well, this is an example. For example, at GMS 4.5, this is a physical education class. Obviously, during PE class, we have to be careful in terms of CDC guidelines for students. If we're having students exert, they are outdoors at this time, and during the winter months, we plan to have kids outside, and a lot of PE classes are being held outside at this time. But when they are held inside, and this, I believe, was on a day one of the few days when it actually was inclement weather, students also can be involved in other activities that are very much around physical education. So this was around students demonstrating and honing their motor skills and hand-eye coordination, doing a low cardio drumming activity, which is also a musical integration piece that was part of this physical education class. And that was Becky Belmore's PE class. So fall sports, thankfully we were able to start the fall sports season. The MPA provided guidance, and just like all of us at this point, trying to figure all this out during a pandemic. Thankfully, the MPA gave us the guidelines that we could work the season through. One of the bright spots, I suppose you could say, is that we really have been forced to look at live streaming athletic events so that we can provide access to parents and others This is something that we've been wanting to do for quite a while, and we decided obviously this is the year to do it. We now have a YouTube link that people can go to and actually watch their children's sporting events, and also providing that as a service to the community. I think it's a way to get people interested in the schools that may not want to watch a meeting or whatnot, but would be interested in watching some sort of a sporting event. So we've been able to do that with field hockey and with soccer so far, and we plan to expand that. Making your own seat cushion. This is one way of being creative during the pandemic. We have some teachers that have opted to purchase, and we've had funds available for purchasing seat cushions when kids go outside, and nearly every day, except for maybe one, we've had great weather and be able to do these things. But there's other ways to actually create a nice seating arrangement if you want to, and these kids actually created their own. And these are called, I think they're in the Girl Scout program. You can actually create sit-upons, and so that concept from the Girl Scouts was transferred over to the middle school, 6-8, and we had kids creating their own, I believe during art class, their own sit-upons, and then using them from vinyl grocery bags in some cases to create something that was somewhat comfortable. So we have a variety of different ways that students are sitting outside or being active outside or sitting and learning. COVID funds round number 2, we did just receive our allocation amount from the State Department of Education. It's a very quick turnaround, quicker even than the first round. The funds in the application are due October 15th, which is less than 2 weeks away. Very quick to decide how to spend $1.5 million is slightly more than what we had last time. There is a Finance Committee meeting that's being called this week. Mr. Desmond, I believe, has started to call a meeting so that we can put these ideas on some sort of a timeline to get this application in such a short order in spending the $1.5 million. Again, like the first round, December 30th is the deadline for spending all funds associated with the coronavirus relief funds. So all told, the district will have received just over $3 million this fall in CRF funds. Student flu clinics, we're really happy to be able to offer this in conjunction with fire department, EMT, working with the town. These flu clinics are incredibly important this year. I think getting a flu shot is a good idea every year. But this year, in order to reduce symptoms so they don't get confused with COVID-19 this winter and try to keep our students as healthy as possible, we do have a student flu clinic, and it's going on tomorrow. And on Wednesday, it's by the alphabet, just because we're expecting a rather large group of students to participate in this. If you need any more information, we sent it out also through our newsletter. Schools have sent this information out as well, and any sort of links that need to be accessed. We also are providing, as we do every year, a staff flu clinic this month, and that will be a separate clinic to keep our staff in good health as well, so that they are not having to stay home as much if they're not feeling well. Obviously, this is a year, though, if people are having symptoms, we are asking them to stay home. A lot of times, students and staff will kind of muddle through a day if they don't feel 100%. We've been stressing a lot, especially with our staff, that if that's the case, please do not come in. And if you've got symptoms that are related to, that could be COVID in any way, and we have a screener that obviously our students and staff are following. And then the second part of my superintendent's report is strategic priorities. And I will tell you, this will be a short presentation. It's the shortest one I've given on the strategic plan since I've been here. Just a reminder, this is our strategic plan. It has 4 parts. In any given year, these are the parts that we would be focusing on, all 4 of them. wellness, early childhood education, skills for the 21st century, and every student college and career ready. This year is going to be a slightly different year. Usually there's some sort of a top 10 kind of big ideas that we are trying to look at, objectives in the strategic plan. We are not talking about the top 10 this year. This is not a year to do that. Appreciate the board's support in placing the vast majority of our strategic plan on hold. Obviously, with the idea that we have a pandemic response plan that you have approved, and we need to be making sure that that is implemented all year long. There are a couple of key areas that are exceptions to this, and it doesn't mean just because we're not focusing on certain parts of the strategic plan that the work all of a sudden stops. There's certain areas of the strategic plan where there might be a group or committee that is continuing that work. It just isn't a major focus of the district during this year, obviously because we're focusing so much on the health and safety and on reworking our instructional program for this year. So the pandemic response plan obviously is health and safety. How do we achieve a productive school year in the yellow zone for our students? We'll be talking more about essential skills and what skills do students need at the end of this year. Those skills are going to be honed back from what the state standards are and learning targets to being what are the most important things that students need to learn. Obviously, in-person learning, virtual learning days, and remote school are kind of our three buckets that we're talking about literally every single day of the school year and trying to refine these things. Also, how do we respond if there is a positive COVID case? Many districts in our area have experienced this already. We have not, thankfully, since school has started, but there inevitably will be a day when we will need to. And how do we respond to that? And we do have, we're developing contingency plans right now. I was actually on the phone with another superintendent in the area last week who went through an experience recently and just kind of got those steps and the information from the superintendent on exactly how they responded when they had a positive case, which I thought was very helpful. And then obviously readiness for the possibility that the entire district goes red. There's two reasons why that would happen. One would be if the governor decides that we're going red as a state or that the county must go red. Another reason would be if we have a situation in our district locally that requires us to go red, whether it's multiple COVID cases or shortage of staff or a major drop in student attendance all of a sudden. Those might be reasons why we would need to go red as a district. Otherwise, we're trying to not go red as a district, trying to isolate cohorts, isolate a school even, and trying to avoid the idea of the district being in red. And if we do have to go in red, and I've said this multiple times, it most likely would be for a 2-week quarantine period, unless the governor makes a decision outside of the district. But just to get beyond the quarantine period and then to bring people back in. So that would be, in my situation, being able to say that's the worst case scenario that I'm foreseeing this year. Another area of focus this year, so there's really the pandemic response plan. There's three. This is the second one, prioritize learning outcomes. We call these essential standards. We also call them essential learning targets. They're all pretty much the same thing, just different names. What are those things, again, that students should be able to know and be able to do by the end of the year? That's different from a normal year. In a normal year, we have a lot more opportunity for curriculum. And in this year, our teachers have started that process. That was during the first 5 days, and we thank the board for those 5 staff days. And being able to identify those most important learning outcomes for the year in a content area at a grade level or by a course at the high school. And so we will be publishing those actually on our website and making that apparent to parents, students, and of course our staff, which are the people who are developing those outcomes, so that people know where those learning targets are during the year, because they are different than a normal year. And this is why are we doing this? Given the limited time that you have with students, this is written for a time not such as this, just in a normal, typical school year. This is also true, but even more so now. Curriculum design has become more and more an issue of deciding what you won't teach as well as what you will, and you can't do it all. And as a designer, you must choose the essential. And I think this is really challenging for teachers who are very conscientious and want to make sure that students are well prepared for the next grade level and for life beyond Greeley, to let go of some of the stuff that they have been teaching. And I've already run into it. I was talking with teachers last week, and that's exactly what I heard. And we're just constantly messaging, this is not a typical year, and it's more and more important this year that those essential standards are the ones that are focused on. And then the third major focus, and again, this won't involve a huge amount of folks, but it will involve, obviously, the facilities committee, the board, some of our administrators, and the building committee. But the K-5 facilities work needs to continue. Our enrollment projections haven't changed, even though we are in a unique year. We need to not lose a year, and thinking about what the next steps are for, our enrollment surge. So in terms of the primary school project, just, where we're at right now, there's been a property, these are all things that we've been doing. Property search, we've looked at multiple properties, as the board knows. Those properties, none of them have panned out at this point for various reasons, as you know. And we're also taking another look at our campus and seeing if there's opportunities on the campus again. We've already looked at our campus twice now in the recent past, but I think giving it a third try again with a different lens is something that I would want to make sure we do without passing up that opportunity as we continue to search for property. So that advertisement is still out there. I have still gotten inquiries in the last month even about property, and we've passed those on to the architect. Again, nothing has panned out at this point. That would be of value to the district at this point in building a new school. But it's something we need to continue looking at. But there'll be a process, even looking at the campus again, there's an opportunity to look at another concept design that might work on this campus or not, looking at the facilities committee or having the facilities committee review it, and then making sure that the board is very involved in that process. So those are just some steps that we're going to make sure we're not leaving behind and losing time over the next few months. So, and just a reminder, we have a strategic dashboard. It's on our website. There's a link, and anybody can go to this dashboard and kind of look at the status of the strategic plan. Again, a lot of these things will be on hold for the year, but the work that we've done up to this point as a district can be found here on this dashboard. And there's ways of clicking through that and looking at specific items in the strategic plan. So much different strategic plan presentation than other years, but I think it's a year that we need to really focus our efforts on just a few things as a district. Again, there's work in the strategic plan that are continuing in different areas, and that work will continue this year with different groups, but it just isn't a major district focus right now in terms of what we need to be doing and the resources and time that we have. So happy to answer any questions.
I have one question, and then anybody can chime in. And you mentioned, I think at the end of this year, we're going to be having an update on learning outcomes, and that was something that I think a lot of families are nervous about what those are and how they can be communicated to parents so that they can feel like they're on track. Mm-hmm. So can you just elaborate on that a little bit more and how that will be shared?
Right. Teachers actually have done a lot of this work already during the first 5 days. So a lot of the learning outcomes that they have been developing are on paper, and what we're doing right now is compiling everybody's learning outcomes across the entire district, looking at each grade level, each content area that they've been developed, and putting it into a usable format, making sure we don't have gaps. Once that we just started that about a week ago. So once that process is finished, we're going to be posting that and sending it out to parents directly. Actually, our staff is also interested in seeing the whole district. A lot of staff members would like to see content areas at different levels for this year, and just kind of seeing where those learning targets are. But yes, that work should be done within the next 3 to 4 weeks. Great. So that we can let parents know. So that's my goal, is to have it done within a month.
Great. I know that will be really appreciated, so thank you. Peter, go ahead.
Jeff, I know we're on a time constraint, but is the full board going to have a chance to get a cut at this, whatever comes out of the Finance Committee before? I know we're on a timeline of the 15th. Do we need a special meeting so that, I mean, I'd personally like to see what it is, how it relates to facilities, and I'm sure the rest of the board members are curious. Are we going to get a cut at this?
So I was actually talking to Scott today about that, and we were a little discouraged that we only have less than 2 weeks to get this done, and we just got our allocation late last week. It's even shorter than it was the first time around, and it doesn't even give us a board meeting to get through that. I would defer to Tyler and to Kevin as the finance chair to, you know, I think we need to talk with both of you about the possibility of a special meeting. I think it's something, you know, when we're spending a little over $1.5 million, it would be, I would advise that the full board at least has that option of approving it, not just the finance committee. I think it's good practice, but it would require, before the application is filed, in approval, and really we need still several days to make sure that application is completed. So if there's a finance committee, I think we're trying to get a finance committee meeting in by the end of this week. I think the latest that we could do a special meeting would be very early next week, and of course we have a holiday on Monday, but and I think, you know, if it's a one item meeting, I can't imagine we couldn't pull off a remote meeting for that if it's a one agenda item. But we just I know several members will be part of that finance decision, but I do feel uncomfortable with $1.5 million not being approved by the full board. And you know, we apologize that this is such a tight turnaround. We were very surprised that it was the 15th was the application deadline, in just getting that amount.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, you never want to turn down money, but I do think it was in some ways an irresponsible move by the state, in that we really had some thoughtful discussions and the strategic stuff on round one, but to come up with 10 days, and I know we've got some strategic things we want to do with our facilities, and we're probably going to have to do some very creative things to see if this can fit in, but it's, with the exception of whatever we can do to help staff and get more people in and do all this other stuff, but boy, I think it's almost totally irresponsible to actually, you know, force money on that could be spent to maybe fill in the revenue gap that we're going to have next year in our budgets. But I do realize there's a problem that some of this money was tied to COVID, but I just feel very, very uncomfortable having to do a half expletive deleted effort to have to come up with this stuff, and so much for my editorial.
Yeah, Scott and I have a webinar tomorrow that the state is providing that we'll be participating in. It's basically what you can buy and what you can't buy in a short period of time. The December 30th deadline is very difficult to meet because you have to have things on hand by December 30th. And so we don't have a lot of choices here. We have to buy, you know, items that we can have on hand by the 30th of December, and we have to get that application in very short order. So a lot of the superintendents, I had a meeting last week, were saying, "Whoa, this is too fast." And you know, can you at least give us ideas about things that would be pre-approved by the state, so that we're not guessing at this point. We only have such a short period of time to get it together. So we'll be participating in that webinar tomorrow, and hopefully being able to give the Finance Committee a good accounting of what we think would be our suggestions for using the $1.5 million. We certainly have needs. We just need to know. We just need to hone those needs in, and they have to be directly related to COVID-19. And these are, I just want to make sure that just for the public, these are federal dollars that flow through the State Department of Education. So the Congress passed this money The states can use it as they wish, but they have a deadline. The governor then released these funds to the public school systems in 2 rounds. And she released basically the full amount that she basically could at this point release to public school systems. So we appreciate the money, and we appreciate the federal government providing these funds.
Mike,
But
did you
it's
have
challenging.
Yeah, just a few quick things. First, I echo exactly Peter's opinion. But noting that my frustration is definitely with the state. I don't think this is anything on you. Like you mentioned, this was Congress passed this money. Congress passed this a long time ago. The state knew we had this. We could have done this in 1 round and given folks a longer lead time. That's just an airing of frustration. So in the moment of editorializing, I'm joining you, Peter. That said, you know, I do think we have the opportunity. There are things that we know that can work. So I certainly do trust you and Scott to start to come up with items, the finance committee and such. But again, I agree, having the whole board be a part of this would be really important. Specifically, I just want to put in a plug. I really would strongly encourage us incorporating more deeply integrating outdoor learning into this round. You know, we had to pull the things together pretty last minute. We've had a number of meetings. I think we can put more effort into it this time and perhaps do another big tranche towards that. The other items, thank you for putting together the parent forums. I think I really appreciate it. I think it's a great thing that we're doing. And just a plug, hopefully it's been useful. I wish I had gotten to them. I'm going to try to go tomorrow or participate tomorrow. Hopefully we can continue those throughout later in the fall, you know, not right away, but, you know, things keep going. I think the forums are just a good opportunity for folks to wade in and make sure voices are heard in addition to the board meetings. And then the final thing, a question, you'd floated possible changes to the yellow plan. I'm just interested to know if you have any ideas of what we would foresee in terms of changes.
So I am going to provide the board a summary as to all parents that attended as well as all the staff, summary of kind of the big ideas. So I don't want to, I'm not sure I am prepared to, even though I got pages of notes and I have some big ideas that have come up, we have another forum and I'd like to give parents an opportunity to chime in on that. But I definitely see several things that we could make improvements in based on the forums that we've had. They have been interesting, and I agree. I think during this unique year we're in, it would be a good idea for us to continue hosting forums, whether we have another one in January, you know, some forums in January and then later in the spring. I don't think this year is going to be a lot different unless things change rapidly, you know, with vaccinations or whatnot. So it will be important for us to continue getting feedback from people. There are other ways to get feedback. I know, you know, we offered 3 parent sessions we're offering, but still I know parents have different schedules. We tried offering those at different times, 1 in the morning and 2 at night. But it is difficult, I think, for people to give up that time. And so we're also looking possibly at a combination of a survey later in the fall, in addition to holding more forums in the middle of the year, just to give people another opportunity to give us feedback. And in terms of the outdoor learning, we want to do that. I think you know, and I say Scott and my frustration is the turnaround time that we have to have these things in place and the timelines that we're dealing with. It's very challenging to meet these timelines by December 30th. And that's why kind of the focus on a larger project like the amphitheater that we know we can get designed and we can get a contractor in and try to get that through. But it is challenging to spend that kind of money in a short period of time. It's usually something that we would spend over a year looking at.
Thanks, Scott. Scott, Jeff, oh my goodness. It's already a long week. It's Monday.
Sometimes we're the same, never know.
All right, does anyone else have any questions, Kevin?
I just wanted to address both Peter and Mike's question with regard to finance. And I think that after we have a discussion on Friday, have options, have opportunities, have that discussion to help move that forward in the most expedient way possible. it is going to mean that it may be an exceedingly unpleasant, quick turnaround, because we're going to pull the Finance Committee together on Friday to look at those. And the reason I think that we have to keep asking those pointed questions, these are funds to support what's going on right now. Now, I agree in infrastructure and everything else, but if there are ways that we can use these funds to provide a better experience, a more robust experience for people that are remote, it's an opportunity. They've got to be part of the district more than they are right now, and I know it's challenging. So I'd love to see what you and Scott can come up with on that. And then, Mike Simmons was a brilliant finance chair, because he was able to pull together the difficult discussions and then bring it back to the board. So I'm going to try to emulate that and see if Mike can help me think around corners on that piece of it. That's it. So, we'd have to meet next week, and it would be, a Wednesday, Thursday kind of thing, if that's okay. I don't mean to overreach.
No, I think it's absolutely. So I think it's just a matter of waiting to hear from us, most likely Fran, about trying to schedule something that we can all be available for. So go ahead, Elias.
So as far as you mentioned the significant likelihood of Greeley eventually having a confirmed positive case, is there a specific, I know Freeport had something similar to, like, an outbreak I wouldn't say, but kind of a collection of positive cases. Do we have a specific plan to deal with a confirmed positive case when it comes?
Yes, we have a leadership team meeting tomorrow, and that will be one of our agenda items actually is to have some sort of a framework in place with the input of our health team, our district physician, on exactly how we would do that. The thing is, in talking with another one of my colleagues, is that it's challenging because every case is a little bit different, and how you approach it is different. And the CDC does walk you through, and they basically direct you. This is what you will do, and you will do this contact tracing, and these are the groups that you need to contact trace with this particular person, student, staff member, or whatever. So they're very, CDC is very directive, and that's been the experience that I've heard from, probably 3 other districts now that have been through it. So, but we will have a general feeling or general way that we're going to approach this as well. I've said this before, but as long as there is not a staff member, that we have to take out of the mix because they have been, they're ill because of COVID, for example, we would try to first quarantine a cohort and the staff that goes with that cohort, whoever works with that cohort, and basically move everything offline or out of the building and go red with that cohort, students and staff, for as long as the CDC tells us we have to. So that's anywhere from 2 days to 14 days. And it depends on what cohort, if it's A and B, sometimes it's going to be pieces of A and B because the staff members work with both. So generally is to not disrupt the educational experience, at least it's in red, people are in red, but it wouldn't be more than 14 days according to the CDC guidelines. So unless all of a sudden multiple cases just bloom within that cohort, then it makes it longer. But if it's just one case, that's the general direction, is to continue the education at home.
So that's exciting to hear that it isn't like you don't really see a foreseeable complete red scenario moving forward. It would be like 2 weeks in red,
right,
and then to attempt to return to yellow. Okay.
If there's multiple cases, and again, this is all just based on what we've gotten for guidance from the Department of Education, CDC so far, if there are multiple cases within a school, that could mean that the school is closed. When I say closed, go into red for the time period that the CDC says, up to 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So the CDC, their guidance says 2 to 14 days. That's their period, and it depends on the situation that we're in.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff, I have a couple questions. Do we have, when you look at the plan on having people go out because they're quarantined, will there be thoughts on what staff will do if they're not sick but they're being quarantined?
Yes, that's actually what we're going to be talking about tomorrow for the leadership team, as the responsibilities of staff members during that time, because it's going to look different
Right, and to
than,
make sure that we can keep people engaged and working with kids if they are in fact healthy, just being quarantined.
right, exactly.
And is there a list from the state that lists which schools have cases and whether it's a student or a staff member? Is there anything like that
The
out
main
there?
CDC, I believe, carries that, but the Department of Education, to my knowledge, has no information.
Okay, but it's
Yeah.
just by town with the CDC, it wouldn't be by the school district, right?
Right, they don't list
Yeah.
them by schools.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Go ahead, Madison.
So I was wondering if people will have input on how the extra COVID funding is spent, just because I know that as a student I've received multiple times the school didn't have the funding, so we can't do that. So I was just wondering if students, teachers, or just people in the community will have input on how that extra money is spent.
Yes, I did talk with the president of the Teachers Association Friday, when we knew what our allocation amount was, and just said, if you have ideas for membership of the Teachers Association, we'd like to get those in a very short period of time. I think Madison, that's a great idea for students, and Mr. Hoffman and I can certainly talk about the student government at least, giving some sort of feedback on that. We don't have a lot of time to get it from all students at this point, but at least if there's a group at the high school that we can turn to, such as student government or student council, and get their feedback, I would love to do that. Trying to get as many ideas right now as we can.
With that, is there any more information about online learning with live streaming classes? Because I know personally I have one class that's live streamed and it actually really helps, and I know a lot of other students that would really appreciate online learning where it's more live formatted, and I was wondering if there was any more progression with that.
So the request for proposals is not closed yet. It will be closing very shortly. We'll be awarding the contract through the Finance Committee to a vendor. I believe by October 13th is the date that we're hoping to issue that award. So from there, we'll develop a plan with the vendor on first getting our network repaired and up to speed where it needs to be with all the fiber. And that process will start right away after we award that. And then we're going to start the purchasing process. It might be the same vendor or a different vendor. It depends on what a vendor can offer us. Sometimes a vendor only does network. Sometimes a vendor does both. They'll provide the equipment for live streaming, such as cameras and mics and all that stuff. But our RFP put out a mobile unit, classroom unit, which means that teachers can actually pack up the equipment and take it home with them and actually live stream it from home using the equipment, or they can do it in class. And we opted to do that instead. So once we have all that information, it's going to be a while before all of that is in place. But we are actually putting together right now a live stream work group. And this group will be looking at managing the project so that we are very thoughtfully bringing teachers in and training them who are interested in doing this, initially, so we can get it going, and then, going from there.
Yep,
That's kind of our initial plan right now. But yes, live streaming will be, I think, very helpful for students who are on the off days, and also in our remote school who've been, asking for that as well. And those are things that we're discussing. Live streaming also, and I'll just put it out there, I think is most appropriate for the secondary grades, middle school and high school. At the elementary level, we haven't found it to be as effective in terms of looking into it. And I also think philosophically, I'm not sure live streaming at the elementary level is something that young students should be doing. So those are considerations, and that's obviously how we build the RFP as well.
Thank you, Jeff. Anyone else have any questions for Jeff? Jeff, you might as well stay there because we have a couple more things we might have questions for you. It's hard not having you with us at the tables. So as we move on to communications, we look at policy BE again as a first read. I didn't know, Jeff, if you wanted to mention anything about that, or if we're going to just keep it as a first read for now and vote on it next meeting.
Yeah, and I apologize that we changed that from a second read to a first read. I think at the last meeting we talked about it being a second read tonight. So Fran and I went through the policy last week, and when we looked at it, we saw that there was some information in the policy that needed to be adjusted for your review beyond just the 6:30 time if you choose to go with 6:30. So in making those adjustments, we thought it only made sense to bring it as a first read. The other adjustments is to make sure that we're following practice. Some of this language is very old language, and it was talking about noticing a board meeting 7 days prior. We haven't noticed a board meeting 7 days prior, and there's nothing in statute that says we have to do that for years and years and years and years. So it really doesn't make sense to continue having that language in a policy. Our practice has been for years, 72 hours, if practicable. We always try to get the agendas out on Thursday, at least 72 hours on Thursdays prior to the Monday board meeting. We have a relationship with the forecaster where they expect the agenda on Thursdays. And if not, we tell them for some reason we've got to get the agenda out Friday morning or whatnot, but that's pretty rare. So we wanted to change the policy to reflect our practice and not, we consider it to be very old language. So that's an adjustment in there. And then with emergency meetings, we changed the language. I believe it was 3 days notice. If you truly need an emergency meeting, I think it was 3 days notice. I don't have it right in front of me. You're certainly not going to want to give 3 days notice for an emergency meeting or that. So we changed the language to 24 hours. So if the board needed to, for some reason, you have a topic that you need to have an emergency meeting on, I can't think of a time when we've actually had an emergency meeting. But we would just have to give 24 hours. And again, there's nothing in statute that has a time limit. That's certainly by policy and a local decision. So we're recommending that that doesn't tie your hands if you need to have a meeting quickly. So while we had that policy in front of you, I just wanted to make sure that we had those adjustments, and in doing so, we didn't want it to be a second read tonight, obviously for the board to digest it.
Thank you, Jeff. Does anybody have any questions?
Are we going to discuss this at all with the first reading?
We can, go ahead.
No, I will just do a frustration. I do think that 6:30 makes more sense, but as a formatting thing, I think half of our meetings were an hour to an hour and 15 minutes into our agenda before we get action items. Now, I realize that some of these reports are important, but 2 meetings ago when we had something very important to discuss in an executive session, it was 9:15, and we'd lost a couple miles per hour off our fastballs by that time, and I think we've got to find some way to put a time limit on these reports so that if we've got important things. However, there are times that are important, like when we had a lot of public comment on an item, and it was the totally appropriate thing to do to get those folks to comment. But we were an hour last month, and I realized some of that was we were trying to find out how the school was getting going. We were an hour and 20 minutes tonight, and I guess I'm spoiled by the council that in most cases with those agendas, we were into our action items probably on a good night, probably 15 minutes, and when the howling mob showed up, we might be a half an hour to 40 minutes. But I just get frustrated as hell as we sit around and all this stuff, and if we've got important things for the board to do that we're dubbing around and don't get to them to an hour and a half to 2 hours into the meeting. And again, that's my soapbox, and I apologize.
You don't have to apologize, Peter. I think that that's something to keep into consideration. Setting the agenda is something that we can adjust, and I'd be curious to hear what other people think about that, whether it's right now, knowing that we're already an hour and 20 minutes into it, or offline.
Well, I'm very good at lighting fuses, so I've done it again.
Does anybody have any comments as it relates to agenda flow or follow-up to Peter?
Just really quick, I hear your frustration, Peter. The only thing that I would say is that we tend to ask administrators and others to give reports, and they've been here all day. And so that would then potentially bump them back.
But just shorter.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody else have any discussion points for this before we move on? Margot?
I just wanted to bring up when this was talked about at the last meeting, the thing that I thought about is that sometimes there are meetings prior to the school board meeting, and I just wanted to check with Jeff and other people who are here all day, who usually are at those meetings, like policy, for example. Does moving the school board meeting earlier take away the time that you need to finish your workday, have something to eat, and then go into 2 meetings back to back? So I just want to be aware.
So. No, I think it's just 30 minutes.
Okay.
I think if it was an hour, that would probably be the case for some of us trying to do those meetings before board meetings, et cetera. But I think a half an hour is okay. Yeah.
Okay, if you say so.
That's my take on it. The other piece I was just going to mention is that if there is, if there are, a wish of the board or will of the board to look at your agenda again and how it's presented. Different districts do agendas in different ways. Some districts have the action items right at the beginning of the agenda. It's all over the place. There's no one way of doing it, but that, the policy committee, if there's an interest of the board, that the policy committee, through Ian as the chair, take that up as an item on the policy agenda. There's 100 ways to run the agenda for a board meeting. And you certainly have the chair has the discretion of changing the agenda, especially momentarily if necessary. And I know we've done that on different occasions, so.
Yes, thank you. All right, so moving on, under communications, we've talked a bit about this already this evening, but parent forums, we've had 2 of the parent forums so far. We've also had a staff forum. I attended all 3 of those so far, and there's 1 more parent forum tomorrow evening. Board members are welcome to attend any of those to listen and to get some insight to all the things that we get presented. It's helpful to have that insight. Does anybody need any more information on that? Everybody's received an invite, I'm guessing. I'm just grateful that we were able to do them. I hope we're able to do them again throughout the year. It is one of our board goals, and to know that we've already kind of accomplished step 1 of that goal feels really great. So thank you again to all the administrators for adding that to your days, and especially at the end of the day. I know they're appreciated by our community and provide a lot of great insight. So now as we move on to items for action, the next item is approval of professional staff grade 7 science teacher. Could I please have a motion for that?
So moved.
Thank you, and a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? Any opposed? No? Thank you. And then we'll move on to vote to elect the board delegate to the MSBA Delegate Assembly on October 30th, 2020. And thank you to Kevin Desmond, who has volunteered to take on this
So moved.
delegation. Okay, there you go. Second?
I'll second, and I'm also interested in attending.
All right.
Okay, great.
Good.
Is there a limit to attending?
No.
Okay.
Especially this year because it's
Yeah.
virtual, yeah.
Take a
It's
virtual
definitely a
space.
helpful,
I'm
as
a
a
chair.
first-time board member, it's definitely a great way to get some more information.
Yeah,
So I would reach out to Fran if you're interested.
I will.
Okay. All right, all in favor? All right. And then the last item is the 2021 calendar revision. Jeff, do you want to give any background to this? I feel like it would be helpful.
Yeah, so when the board approved the calendar for the 2021 school year back in, I believe it was April or May, when you approved the calendar, there was a notation on the calendar that said after 3 days, the district can revert at that point to a remote learning days. But the 3 days of weather-related, snow, wind, whatever, that brings us out of the district, we would have to go through 3 days of those, add those on to the end of the school year. I've been asked by parents, I've been asked by teachers, why are we doing that? Why can't we just revert to, since we've already not perfected, but we've experienced this for many months, especially last year, why can't we just go into red if we know that a storm is coming, or we have the idea that there might be one coming, and kind of prep people for it. We're also in a mode this year, obviously, where our students do take their devices back and forth, especially when they're leaving their cohort days. So they're prepared. That's kind of been our prep to do that. So it does kind of raise the question, is it necessary for us to do 3 days of weather-related tack it onto the school year this year? Or, would it be the will of the board to go ahead and just waive that requirement for the year, end the school year on, and I don't have the calendar in front of me, but on the day that was designated in the calendar. Just as a side note, because this is an odd year that we're in, the commissioners already waived any days missed. So you remember that you changed the calendar to allow for the staff to have 5 days at the beginning of the year. We lost 3 student days when we did that. The commissioner has waived any days lost at this point. They don't have to be made up at the end of the school year. And given the year that we're in, I think that's probably a good thing at this point. She's only making that waive until January 15th. So any days lost after January 15th for weather do need to be made up, by the commissioner's decision making at this point, unless she changes that. So I'm advising the board that I don't know if there's really a point in having that go forward with the 3 days, or if we can just revert to a virtual or remote day when there's weather conditions that would call the district out. There's one exception, and that would be when there's power outages. And the reason we're not doing anything about the other day when there were widespread power outages is that it falls within the commissioner's waiver until January 15th, so we don't have to do anything with it. But that certainly would be the exception, is when there's a widespread power outage.
Jeff, I have a question about power outages. I mean, just the other day, I lost power, but like 3 houses up the road from me didn't. So how would we assess that to say, nope, it's big enough where there isn't enough households to be able to connect remotely?
Yeah, we got several reports. I had people emailing me, administrators had people emailing. We also had a lot of staff members who couldn't access, so they weren't even able to get in. So when we have that issue, we just call it as a day, and that's why it took a little while for us to call it. Okay. But we had enough people that just couldn't get in, so it really wasn't a day that was going to work. Okay. It's a hard call because outages aren't always just a whole town.
Exactly.
Sometimes they're scattered, but we do the best we can, and we had enough people that were, especially our staff, couldn't even get in, that we knew it really wasn't going to be productive.
Jennifer, you have a question?
But I think to talk about the power outage, I think from a student perspective, it was still expected that they did the normal day. And then there was social media saying they didn't have to do it. So I think the messaging has to be clear as we move through this. Because I think it just felt really clunky.
I think
coming from our household anyways.
Yeah, and I did hear that too, Jennifer. Well, and that comes from me, so I'll make sure that we're making that more clear. We're just calling it. It is the first time that we've dealt with it. Yeah. Most of the time it's usually snow or something like that we're dealing with, and that's an easy call.
Right. And I think there was frustration because some people didn't have internet. Kids were really upset because they felt they were behind.
Right.
And then other people were fine, like we were saying. So I don't know how to make it better, but
I think next time, if in hindsight, it's the first time we've been through it, that if we have a power outage and we're hearing things by 8 o'clock in the morning, we're just putting out a message that today is not a school day.
Okay.
Even if even if it's not affecting the entire district, but it's pockets, I just think out of fairness.
Exactly.
We have staff that also live out of the district. If we've got enough staff, I had principals emailing saying we have some staff members that aren't able to access now.
Yeah.
It's just not going to be a school day at that point.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yep.
Go ahead, Peter. Peter?
Well, I'm going to break precedent and actually move that we approve the calendar revision.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Wait,
Any more discussion?
But we're just voting on removing the 3
Revision,
days?
yes.
Okay. I guess I wasn't clear on this.
So
So the revision is what
He
Jeff
talked
stated was to remove the 3 days, not just the calendar as it stands through the end of the year.
So can I just, do you mind?
Sorry.
No, I don't.
I mean,
I'm-
I looked over the calendar that's being presented till the end of the year, and I know that what you just presented, I just want to make sure I'm clear on what we're voting on. I know that you want to get out of here, Peter, and
No, I'm,
Y'all do, but-
I think he has made that fairly clear, but if you're confused, go ahead.
So we did put out 3 different calendars recently that were updated, obviously, and we had cohort A, B calendars, and then the district calendar, which was updated. On the district calendar, we did not remove the wording, obviously, because the
Right.
board approved it. At the bottom that said, after 3 days or something like that, then the district can revert to red, a virtual day, remote day, when there's a weather-related condition. So I'm asking the board tonight on the district calendar itself, not the cohort A or B, to remove that language so that now gives us flexibility. So we do not have to make those 3 days up at this end of the school year, no matter what cohort day we're talking about.
okay. Thank you.
I don't know if that's more clear, but.
Same question.
thank you, Jeff. It's important that we all understand what we're voting on.
You're basically removing that notation that's on the calendar.
Yep. Okay. Any more discussion? All right. All in favor?
Was there a second? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I don't
Who
know
was
if
the
there
second?
There wasn't one.
Okay, Mike Simmons, second.
Okay.
And all in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and lastly, adjourn the meeting. I need a motion for that.
So moved.
Thank you, Mike. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Kate. All in favor? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.